Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this is going to be an awesome episode. It might get a little bit emotional here and there. We're going to be talking about mental health. We're going to be talking about resiliency, maybe a little bit of motorcycles. We might talk about that. This is me and my friend Dallas. We've been friends for a long time. This is our first time we actually get to chat. And the reason we are getting together today is because of our mutual friend, Robert, the warrior strategist Garcia, got us together so we can make this magic happen. If you don't know Robert, you need to know Robert. If you love magazines, his new Shift Life Designs magazine just came out the other day. It's free. So if you love to read, if you love military, check out Shift Advanced Life magazine. So Dallas, my brother, we finally get a chance to talk. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. It feels so good to be on with you finally. We've been talking about this for a very long time.
So I love it. So first question right out the gate. What is your definition of resiliency?
Just the ability to keep moving. The ability to believe in yourself when you don't necessarily feel worthy. The knowledge that no matter what's thrown at you, you're going to be able to keep on going. The ability to remain positive through it, even though you don't necessarily feel like it, you can still see that vision of getting to the end, no matter what you're going through. I think it's about that pretty well covers it.
And I love it. And I think a lot of it is from your background, coming from the great state of Iowa. Hard workers, they put their nose to the grindstone. They don't let anything stop them, really. And I always became a fan of Iowa once I got to know Kurt Warner, and he actually played for the Iowa Barnstormers at one point, and then won a Super Bowl, made it at the NFL Hall of Fame. And I think a lot of it is because of the work ethic of the people from Iowa. So take us back. Tell us about where you come from, where'd you grow up, and a little bit about your military service.
Well, Villisca, Iowa is my hometown, and I definitely respect what you said about work ethic. I take pride in the fact that I worked as a farmhand, a summer's worth of work for a sow to take to market pretty much. So, and that work ethic is definitely something that stays with you. And I just have nothing but respect with the people for the people from my hometown. I miss talking to them. I still see them on Facebook, but it's not the same when you're not, seeing them on a daily basis, but it's just a good bunch of people. What was the next question? You want military stuff?
Yeah. Tell us, why you joined the JROTC, and what was it that drew you to it?
Well, I actually came in through something called the Platoon Leaders Class. I went to college, not really wanting to go to college. I kind of did that because it was just pretty much what was expected, and most of my peers were doing that. And there were a couple things that fell into place where I got a scholarship, and then I got another scholarship and some good grants, and that was enough to make me go, okay, this is supposed to happen. But it was still very intimidating to me to go to an academic environment because I'm not what I would call academically inclined naturally. It's a struggle for me. So once I'm in college, I ended up getting a football scholarship. Not to say that I was a good football player. I was good enough to get a scholarship, but didn't see a whole lot of playing time. And essentially, after my freshman year, I kind of went, what am I doing with my life? Where am I trying to go? And I was working at Camp Aldersgate in Villisca, Iowa, and that was definitely part of my maturing and learning about myself, learning about other people. And while I was a camp counselor, working as either a counselor or a maintenance person around the camp, it hit me real hard that I thought it was time for me to go into the Marine Corps. And so I started looking into enlisting. I wanted to do all the great things that a 18, 19-year-old kid wants to do. go grunt, go recon, go SEALs, all the grandiose ambitions we have as young men with bodies that actually repaired themselves. But that wasn't really in the cards for me. I ended up going back to school. I made an agreement with my parents that I wasn't going to enlist. But then about halfway through my sophomore year, I found out about the Marine Officer Program. And that wasn't an enlistment contract. It was a deal where you said, okay, I'll go to Quantico, Virginia for officer candidate school with a 4.5-week commitment. And you can then drop out if you want to. And that's the end of your contract. Now, I knew full well I wouldn't drop out, but that was how I pitched it to my parents. So ended up going to OCS. I was no OCS All-Star. I was good enough to survive, just like I was good enough to survive college. And ended up going to Iowa State University after that, where I finished up my degree in general studies. It's actually liberal studies, but I'm not liberal, so I don't like how that sounds. So I just say general studies. But get my commission, go do what Marine officers do back to Quantico, Virginia, 6 months of training there with an infantry focus and lots of leadership training, lots of really good, everything from infantry tactics to flying around in helicopters, machine gun time, shooting artillery. We had a great regimen of stuff that we got to do. But at the end of the day, what I retained the most from that was just basic leadership stuff. How to be a good person that is able to inspire other people to follow you. And I think I've used that pretty effectively in my civilian careers that followed. I say careers because I've definitely gone kind of back and forth in what I've done, and what I'm doing now is no exception. So
do we have somebody else? Do we have somebody else supposed to be on the call?
No, just us.
Okay, just making sure, because I had some person named Fran Creamer trying to get in, so just making sure that it wasn't one of us.
Hi, Fran. So that would be my aunt. No, not aunt. Cousin. I think cousin. Some variety of cousin. But great lady. So ended up being an aircraft maintenance officer stationed at Camp Pendleton. I was there for a short amount of time, and next thing you know, this is in the wake of September 11th, and next thing you know, we're scheduled to go to Iraq. So we deployed there. I went there advanced party with a different squadron, HMLA 169, the Vipers. The Stingers showed up about 3 weeks after I did. And next thing you know, we're kicking off a war. I think the ripe old age of 23, 24.
So you got there right before or during the shit started kicking off. So there wasn't a whole lot there except bad guys and sand at this point, right?
Yeah, so we basically landed in Kuwait City. We took a 15-passenger van, or a bunch of them, over to a patch of desert land on the Air Force Base, Ali Al Salem. And they had their areas that were built up with PXs. And I don't know if I ever saw a golf course, but I'm sure it was there somewhere. And, swimming pool, air-conditioned trailers. And then the Marines showed up. We got a patch of desert land, and we built it up from absolutely nothing to a base camp called the Snake Pit that ended up housing 5,000 Marines. So I was there for everything from filling sandbags to bribing Seabees to get building materials to you name it. But it was really interesting because if you ever see interviews with like World War II veterans and them talking about seeing the magnitude of the invasion, I was there at the beginning of the invasion, and seeing the buildup for that was pretty incredible. Laying down expeditionary airfields and installing running water, we saw all of it. So it was really humbling to see just how mighty our military can be.
Now we don't tell war stories on the show. That's for people like Jocko that do it much better than I ever do. But did you see any shit while you were in country?
Depends on your definition of it. We saw plenty of Scud missiles that we ran from and hid in concrete coffins. They were basically just, I call them U-channels. They're just concrete about, I'm guessing 8-inch thick concrete, upside down U's that you kind of just go back and hope you don't get a direct hit. So we were working in a chemical weapons environment. We wear a MOP 4 a lot of the time, which is what military, protective, posture, chemical weapon
Yep.
stuff. We're walking around in very, very hot suits. It's already between 105 and 115 degrees on an average day. So we're just waiting for the booms to stop. We were surrounded by Patriot missiles. And the threat of chemical weapons was very real. You get a lot of arguing back and forth on whether they were there or not, but I believe they were.
So you spent 6 months, and then you went. Then you guys got deployed other places around the world, right?
So we came back to Conus after about 3 months of being there. We turned our aircraft over to another squadron. They were none too happy to get a bunch of broken aircraft because then they have to fix them before they can fly them. So we were in Conus for about 5-6 weeks, and then we redeployed to Okinawa, Australia, and the Philippines, and got to close out the year in fine style. I put on, I think I deployed to Kuwait weighing about 155 pounds, came back weighing like 130. And by the time we left Okinawa, I weighed like 170. So that shows what all that fine living will do when you're living in a barracks room in Okinawa. I was eating steak because I got tired eating MREs.
So how many years did you do total in the military?
I just did one active duty tour, but it's kind of funny how the officer program works. I ended up with 11 years and some odd months on paper because the moment you go to OCS is when your contract really starts, and then you have the reserve time at the end of it. So, but one active duty tour, 4 years.
All right. So let me ask, because normally, if you're in for 10, you're in for 20. And a lot of people probably ask, wait a minute, why don't you just do the full bitch? So what was your thought process in getting out of the military, and how easy was your transition? Because like Sergeant Nick from our group, the Vetpreneur Tribe, talks about, when you step off base, the military doesn't give a shit about you. Your phone stops ringing. A lot of us don't do the 20, so we don't get any money. And we lose the camaraderie that we once had with our former military friends, personnel, Marines. So what was your thought process in getting out, and how was your transitioning out?
I got headhunted into a pretty good job, or at least I thought it was going to be a good job. And I won't name the company name. There ended up being a fair amount of integrity issues in the company they work for. And I'm not here to bash anybody. But so my first job out of the Marine Corps was a wake-up call that it's a whole different culture out in the civilian world. You know, one day I'm leading Marines, the next day I'm negotiating contracts. And those are two very different worlds. And so the transition wasn't too bad for me. But at the same time, I saw a very big shift. I mean, definitely a paradigm shift and a values shift on the people I was surrounded by, different expectations, and very different culture. Corporate culture does not necessarily marry up with what we see in the Marine Corps. So luckily, I think one advantage I had going into it was I was on the air side of the Marine Corps, and we tend to work a lot more hours and days of the week than, say, the grunts will go out for maybe a week or two, then they'll have a week, several days off to recuperate. And air wing, we don't stop. We keep go and go and go. So that probably worked to my advantage a little bit. And as far as me getting out of the Marine Corps, what I did, I had made a promise to a couple of people that I was going to get out before I had a family, and I was looking forward to having kids and all that. So one tour was what I promised, and I kept my promise.
And I love my Marines. I love the mindset, once a Marine, always a Marine. I think you guys have the best dress uniforms, hands down, ever, period, mic drop. But, like I did a video yesterday on how important it is for people, for active duty soldiers, to start preparing to get out, start getting on LinkedIn, start building relationships, start building up your LinkedIn profile. So how important is it to start preparing before you get out?
I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, probably about a 15. And the thing is now with social media and everything, I think it's so much easier to start that earlier on in the process and start networking and all those things. Because when I got out in January 2005, and I'm sure there was LinkedIn. I don't remember using LinkedIn, but I'm sure it was there. So I was kind of leaving the Marine Corps as social media and all that was really starting to get going. I didn't pay much attention to social media until I think I was out of the Marine Corps for the most part. We were so darn busy, didn't have time to. But yeah, I think definitely networking early on is not a bad idea. And it definitely doesn't do anything but good for you if you start networking early and planning. If I were in the military now, I'd be planning my outro like from the time I was in. Keep your resume up to date, document your training. If you meet important people, keep their number, because that may come in handy later.
So
and the job market can be very volatile.
Yes, especially now, especially today, what's going on, it can be very, very volatile. And for me, I believe that I love the saying that your network is your net worth. And if that's the case, I'm a billionaire because my network is huge and I have so many people I can depend on. If I ever need anything, I can always go to my network. So now you get out in 2015.
2005.
2005, you got out. I'm sorry.
All good.
So, what is it like to get out? And then, because like you said, in the air, you guys are go, 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 your balls to the wall. It's you go home when the work is done. You don't go home according to the clock. So what is that like getting into the civilian sector and then going to hang out? You get to the job site. They get there at 9 o'clock, hang out by the water cooler, start working maybe by 10, take a lunch break. Then they're out by 5, and there's still so much work to be done. That drove me crazy. I'm like, how can you guys go home? We got shit to do. So how was it your transformation into the workforce coming from a high tempo, up tempo unit?
I'll just say the only real challenges that I had from a transitional standpoint were more like how I presented my thoughts, how I spoke. Because you know how the Marines are. Like you walk down a hallway, you see another Marine, it's like, "Hoorah, kill." You don't say that in civilian sector. So dropping some of those habits was probably one of my biggest challenges. But as far as the op tempo of the work, the company I joined had recently acquired 3 separate companies, and they were doing a mass merger and doing a ton of layoffs and incorporating all these, big corporate values within three small companies that didn't necessarily share those values. And they were very resistant to change. So again, I don't want to bash the company here, but that created a lot of problems. And it was a big, big thing to manage. Just the cultural shifts, the attitudes, the working hours were pretty awful. But they were trying to do something pretty special. And in the end, I think they did okay. But that transitional point that I came in was pretty brutal.
And, now for me, I find that the veterans that do take their own lives is, number one, they feel that they're alone. And number two, they don't feel that they have a mission. And it's different when you have a job, but most of the time it's not really a mission. It's just a paycheck and you're going home. For me, once I lost my vision, podcasting became my passion, and it became my helping veterans has became my mission again. So I'm not going to take myself out because I have such a big mission ahead of me. So talk to us the differences between a job and then having a mission again.
Well, I'm definitely mission driven at this point. of my very unusual career path. So it's one thing to be able to support your family, and clearly that's a huge priority. And it's another thing to go to bed at night thinking about the good you did in the world to make it better. Um, and for me, regardless of the jobs that I've had over the years, I always put in extra time because I knew I kind of wanted to be doing something nonprofit related. And so I would volunteer with things like Habitat for Humanity, church stuff, all sorts of different things. And I think having those side deals on top of just working a regular job was really important to me. So anybody that's getting out of the Marine Corps in particular, and I'm sure the other services have the same thing, but I know we're very servitude oriented. Serving is a big deal to us, and going and having just a 9 to 5, I think isn't enough for most Marines. I think it's a good idea to have some volunteering things lined up. There's so many organizations I could list off here, but like Team RWB, for example, I know that people that join that, Team Rubicon, emergency response, those kinds of things, they feel much more fulfilled. If they're sitting in a cubicle all day long and then go home, they're not going to feel like they want to. But if they add some things to their plate, like volunteering, maybe it's helping the elderly, maybe it's helping kids at camp, maybe it's, homeless outreach, but chances are they're going to want to do more than just sit in a cubicle all day. So in my case, now I'm running a nonprofit where I should have been probably a long time ago. And I'm having to learn a whole new set of skills doing this, but I feel much more when I go to bed at night, I know I did something important.
Okay, but now when I asked you to send me your bio, one of the things that's jumped out at me is you've lost friends, and so have I. We've lost friends to the 22. What do you think are some of the main reasons that? Because in my opinion, we're losing up to 50 veterans and first responders every day to suicide. I think it's because of, one, they're feeling alone. Two, they feel like they're not enough anymore, and they don't have a mission. What are some of the things that you think, in your personal opinion, that the reason why friends of ours and others in the world are taking their lives at a very rapid rate? It's not getting any better, guys.
Right.
So what do you think what some of the reasons are why they're still doing this?
I think number one, and let me just say this, and I know we're probably going to get there at some point, but in preparation for the things that I'm doing now with the foundation that I run, which is listed right here in the tagline, I interviewed a lot of veterans for this very specific purpose, finding out why this happens. Why are we losing so many guys to suicide? Why are so many people drinking themselves to death and, doing all the risky behaviors and those things? And I definitely did a lot of trend analysis in figuring these things out. And I really have kind of landed on a pretty good formula on how to fix these things. But I'd say number one, I think is frustration. I think they are frustrated from everything from financially to the fact that, if they're working with PTSD every day, but they don't feel like they can share that with people that understand them. So say a spouse that doesn't understand it, doesn't want to understand it, just doesn't respect that it's real. I know that has the potential to really mess people up because they're trying to lean on the person that's supposed to be there for them. And if they aren't compassionate, that can do a lot of damage. So the stigmas can also be a big deal. So destigmatizing is going to be one of the biggest ways to get this problem to get better, at least. Developing understanding the civilian populace of why veterans are the way they are when they come home from war. It's hard to understand if you haven't done it. So, and unfortunately, the media that we have now, and we've had for a long time, I stopped watching the news in 2006. And there were a number of reasons for that I won't go into, but the media can be extremely damaging to people's mental health. And I used to have these conversations with my late stepfather for years on end. He'd always be, I call him up, talk to him on the phone, and he'd be talking about, this, that, other thing going on in politics. And I'm just like, you don't do that. You got to stop doing that. And the moment I stopped watching the media, or at least television news, my life got a whole lot better. My outlook got a whole lot better. So
me too. I went on a news diet in 2020. I don't watch the news. My wife tells me, "Did you see this happen?" I'm like, "No, I don't know. You'll tell me." But I don't watch we don't watch the news because it's always negative, and it doesn't matter what channel you're watching. It's always because if it leads, it bleeds, and if it bleeds, it leads. So they're never going to show you positive stuff. So I don't even bother to go on it. But something you just said really hit home. Is my wife didn't realize what I was going through until we went to go see the movie American Sniper.
That's a good
where
one.
Chris Kyle is sitting in a chair looking at the TV, even though nothing's going on. And he just has that 1,000-yard stare. And my wife looked over at me. She said, "Now I get it. Now I understand." And I think, but for me, and if you follow me, and I know you have, I've tried to take myself out twice. And if it wasn't for my bride saving me the last time, because she knew I was close, and she just took me in her arms and held me for a couple hours until it passed. But in order for me to be humble enough to say, "Honey, I need help, or I'm going to eat my gun. I need help." And I think a lot of guys were all hoo and macho, and that whole man up bullshit is costing lives every day. I think we have to be humble enough to say, "I need help." What are your thoughts?
I think that's exactly the passion that drives what I'm doing now. Let's just say I just had a podcast yesterday, and I was talking about the whole definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Yep.
And the whole 22 a day thing, like 22 a day is an effective tagline. People can remember it. It brings awareness to the problem. But I believe you're absolutely right, sir, that we're closer to the numbers that I've kind of landed on are around 38, probably on the low end. There's a lot of reasons. I've looked at a lot of official statistics websites and periodicals. I've read doctoral thesis on it, and the numbers are off. They're definitely off. And there's a lot of reasons for that, ranging, well, maybe I shouldn't even go there. But all I know is it's a big, big problem. And if we keep approaching it the same way, it's never going to get better. And the reason I'm running a foundation is to approach it in a very, very different way, very unorthodox, not doing what everybody else is doing. So I've got a formula that I'm building one day at a time, and I'm going to need a lot of help to do it. But I truly believe in my heart we can put a massive dent in this problem. That's why I'm leading a foundation.
All right, so let's talk about. Let me just end up on where we were just talking about is 50% of the states don't even report suicides. So that number that we just talked about just doubled automatically. And then they don't talk about the guy or the girl that drank themselves to death, or the guy, the girl that drove off a bridge. So those numbers are really skewed. But let's talk about nonprofits, because there's, just like podcasts, there's 1,000,001 nonprofits out there. Some great ones, some not so great ones. I have a friend that actually runs one, and I'm not going to mention his name because he's a friend of mine, but he's a pain in the ass. Because he doesn't run the nonprofit the way I think he should, where you shouldn't have to beg for money. You should always be providing value, and you shouldn't be hijacking people's posts on social media. I'm just saying. So what made you decide to get into the crazy world of of nonprofits because it's tough out there, especially in a tough economy. It's even tougher to get people to open up their wallets.
It most definitely is. Well, first of all, I probably underestimated the work effort it was going to take. So I'll come out and say that. But this journey that I'm on has definitely been one that I didn't expect to be on. I knew I belonged to the nonprofit space. I knew that I've wanted to be a business leader for a long time, just because I think my ideas are a little different for how to run things, and I'm very creative, and I kind of want to have autonomy and decision making on whether it's profit or nonprofit. I think I need to kind of be at the tip of the spear, and that's probably built upon my background too. But what is the question I'm answering now? Because my brain went all over the place just then. Forgive me.
Well, like I said, nonprofits. One of my great friends, Patrick Kirby, is the nonprofit king. He can raise money for anything, but I think there's a way to raise money, and I think there's a way for people to invest in the mission. Because if you're just trying to raise money, then eventually the people are going to dry up. But once people believe in a mission, then they're more likely to get behind it because there is a mission and people love to get behind missions. So talk about what your first experiences were starting your nonprofit.
Well, my nonprofit is, again, Warriors of the Wind Foundation. It is literally the result of people daring me to do things and me being, I don't want to say dumb enough, but sometimes I feel that way, to take these dares. So I got dared to make a YouTube channel. Then I got dared to make a documentary. Next thing you know, I'm putting together a miniseries and founding a nonprofit to fund the miniseries. That's how this unfolded. And I've started with this one vision in mind, and thankfully I had the wherewithal to go, I need to bring in some really good business minds, as well as veterans who really understand the goal here, to help me kind of navigate this very tough journey. And so I started this thing to do a mini series because I know that's how we're going to get to the most people and save the most people. Because we need to get to the people that are isolating. They're not going to see anything out, driving around. They may not have YouTube access. They might just have network television. And what I'm trying to do is empower veterans to talk about their issues and do it very publicly. And I'm trying to incentivize that in some pretty creative ways. So, but as far as making the impact and getting people to notice you for the right reasons, that's where my boards really come into play, because I've got this pie in the sky. I don't want to say pie in the sky. I've got a very bold vision for this, but the local good has been extremely important as far as earning a reputation over time. And I got to give credit to my board for that. Because I was trying to focus just on this one big goal, and they kind of reeled me back in saying, hey, let's focus locally. Let's do some good for the people in this town, and start there and get traction, get a reputation over time. And thankfully I was able to listen to them and start doing those things. But if it were just me doing this and my way of doing things, I don't know if we'd still be around. So thankfully I've got a good board of directors that keeps me on target.
But I also think that's, why it's good to have somebody like Robert, the Warrior Strategist Garcia, in your corner, right? Because Definitely. He can see the big picture. Like a lot of times I thought I was just a small podcaster. That's all I was. But if it wasn't for Robert, the book that you have in your hand wouldn't be here. I would have never written that book if it wasn't for Robert Garcia. I would have never asked the most popular podcaster in the world, John Lee Dumas, to write the whole back cover of that book if it wasn't for Robert Garcia. So sometimes I think it's, even no matter how good we think we are, like, I'm a two-time top-selling author, podcaster, blah, blah, blah. You said it. I'm getting up to legendary status. Not quite there yet, but I'm getting there. But, yesterday I struggled with imposter syndrome, and I'm going.
It's a bad one, man.
And and sometimes it's a daily thing, and it's sometimes it's good to have somebody like Robert Garcia just smack you in the back of the head and says, "Hey, buddy, time to get up, time to rise and grind." Right?
100%. I could not agree with you more. I will definitely say, going back to why do people kill themselves? One of the things that a lot of people fall into, and I'm definitely guilty of this, they don't think they deserve the help. They don't think they deserve the good things. They don't think they deserve to be on a platform talking about the things that we're talking about. They're just, oh, I'm just me. I'm nobody. Well, everybody's got something to contribute. Yeah. And there's plenty of good to go around. And, if you can't learn to love yourself, it's really hard to do the good in the world that you are capable of. And I think the vast majority of people underestimate their own capabilities. They underestimate their own worth. I know I did for a long time. And the reason I'm doing the things that I'm doing right now are because people saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. And one piece of advice I give to anybody who's struggling mentally, thinking that they're worthwhile, is have people told you your whole life something about you that you don't necessarily believe? Because just speaking about myself, for example, most of my life, people have told me I belong on the radio. I've had a lot of people tell me I belong on television, belong in politics. Now, I don't want to be in politics. I'll tell you right now. I don't particularly want to be on TV, but it's going to be necessary to do the things that we're trying to do. So listening to those people is a really good idea, because I didn't start having a lot of positive things happening until I started implementing things that people have been telling me my whole life that I didn't start doing until like 2 years ago. I'm 46 years old. I just didn't believe I was worthwhile. Like I didn't deserve the things that they were saying.
But, okay, so let's talk about age a little bit, because I find that once people get in their 40s, 50s, they stop competing in life. Like for me, I'm 56 and I feel like I'm just starting. I mean, I feel like I got so much more going on ahead of me. I got a movie coming out soon. I got another book in me. I feel like I'm just going to crush the next 10 years. But, so when guys get out of the military, and girls, once they have to start a second career, a lot of them start competing or stop competing. Have you seen that a lot, that people just, they get fat, dumb, and unhappy and stop competing?
I know a lot of people settle. I don't know if I worded to stop competing, but I know people settle for life's good enough. I'm not happy, but I'm happy enough. And there's a lot of validity to being happy enough too. I don't want that to be taken out of context.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely the other side of the spectrum where I'm never going to be happy unless I have the Lamborghini and the yacht and the da. And there's a lot to be said for being happy in your current circumstances, no matter what. And that's something I'm always working on constantly. I need to continue to find my happiness in the small things. And I would encourage others to do the same. Take a step back and look at what you do have. A roof over your head, air to breathe, if you live in LA, it may not be clean air, but there's so many things we take for granted.
I agree. And every day I wake up with gratitude. Every night before I go to bed, I'm going to bed in gratitude. So I know I'm going to have a great day the next day because I went to bed in gratitude and woke up with gratitude. So talk to us about, because people might have say, wait a minute, you're going to make a TV series? You're going to be on social media in this climate in today's world? So talk to us about where this whole thought process came about and how you're executing it now.
Well, again, there's no way I would be doing this if I hadn't been heavily encouraged to do this, dared to do this. Um, Basically, I was planning on making a documentary because I was dared to. So I started talking to veterans all over the map. And I've spent many, many hours doing Zoom calls with Marines that I served with over the years. And I really paid attention to the things they were saying. We were losing some of the same friends at the same times, both in combat and on American soil, to the badness that we're trying to fix right now. And in interviewing so many veterans at VFWs, at anytime I encounter a veteran, they've got the Vietnam hat on or whatever the case may be, I try to take the time to talk to them and ask a couple of, specific questions about what their journey has looked like. And I know frustration is a huge contributor to suicide. Again, the stigmas, not feeling like you can get help, not feeling like you deserve help. Everybody deserves help. And it's okay to ask for help. And I've done it. I've gotten help in different ways from different people, whether it was calling my best friend or just going, I've been mentally down for a really long time and I've got to fix that because I didn't want to become a statistic. And just believing you're worthwhile is so important. And everybody is on some level. There's something that you're here for.
So now, what are you doing with this documentary? Is it being filmed? Is it being made? Where are you at? Where are you at in the project?
So I believe we've got 5 total filming sessions for the pilot that we're going to submit to Angel Studios. 2 sessions left. I'm not going to give you too many specifics, but what we're waiting on right now is a motorcycle donation to give to a veteran we've chosen as the first Warrior of the Wind. We met him last July through a veteran service project. And essentially this guy had been isolating in his home for the better part of 4 decades. His name's James. We've already given him the road name Beta because of beta testing. He's our test subject to help us figure out how to do this right. He's doing it very willingly. He's having to step out of his comfort zone after being alone, isolating, depressed, immobile. He was using a walker when we found him. And what we found is getting him reconnected with people he understands has healed his mind so much that his body is following in suit. He's getting the help he needs that he wasn't necessarily getting before. And the reason for that is because all of a sudden he's in a pinch. He doesn't know what to do. He asks the VA for help. The VA sends a bunch of veteran bikers over to his house in Farmersville. And all of a sudden he's back surrounded by people he understands. You know as well as I do, veterans, we're a whole different breed of people, especially people who've been to war. And all of a sudden he's like, hey, I can actually talk to these guys and they're not going to judge me as much. I can tell them the struggle I'm having because I can see in their eyes, they probably understand it better than most people do. And so very soon after this, even the same day we met in July of last year, I started asking them some questions and I'm like, I've started this foundation for people like you that need some help, that are struggling. And the reason I was able to do it in the way I did was I've lived the struggle. I've lived the depression. And I know that being connected with veterans, and for me in particular, being on motorcycles while connecting with veterans is incredibly powerful. It's a little bit of everything at once, ranging from mindfulness and meditation on the road to you ride to a restaurant, you stop there, and all of a sudden you've got things to talk about like, hey man, how's your home life? How are things looking for you for real? Like you're out just the 2 of you, maybe it's the 4, maybe it's 400. But you get these conversations after having that experience together on the road. You're taking a break, and that's when the real magic happens because you're talking to these people about, man, did you see that bear we almost hit? There's a cow on the road, and you've got this euphoria about you that lends itself really well to talking next about, so, man, we're feeling good, but how's life really treating you? And so the same day we met James, my girlfriend and I got him on a motorcycle. He hadn't been on a bike in 25 years. He was wearing his late father's helmet and vest, I believe. And it was a magical experience. All of a sudden, this guy he was in a walker when we got there, using a walker when we got there. He was sitting on it most of the time we were there. And all of a sudden he's on a motorcycle with 2 veterans, and his whole life changed in the blink of an eye, it seemed like. So before we left that day, I encouraged him to podcast with me if he was willing. And I said, I think I see something developing here. You're the kind of people that I'm looking for to do these things. That I've got this idea. My basic idea, to finally get to answering your question, is I want to build a battalion of veteran motorcyclists across the country in all 50 states. And the reason I want to do this, so they can heal together, so they can ride together, so they can connect with other organizations and create a very, very large quick reaction force, suicide response team, if you will, prevention response team, to get to veterans within, say, between 15 minutes and half an hour. We're going to connect and create a big spider web of people who care. And we're going to do it very publicly, so the people that are sitting in their homes with a beer in one hand and a remote in the other are going to see this unfolding going, wow, like there's a lot of guys out there like me, and there's people that want to help us. And so we're doing it very differently. We're doing it very publicly. And I'm looking for major sponsorship to do it in a way that makes sense, that doesn't have all these things we have to navigate. If we can get one cohesive brand to sponsor this, it's going to go really, really well. I see it unfolding when I wake up, when I go to bed, while I dream about it. Turning it off has been my biggest challenge, because I do have to be able to have like normal human conversations. But it's one of those things, when you see something that is so powerful waiting to unfold, it's awfully hard to turn it off.
Yeah, I get it. Like, for me, my goal is to help 30 million veterans and 30 million first responders find their mission again. And for me, it's sometimes I can't sleep at night. I'm so excited, and my mind is always churning and stuff like that. So I get it. But, let's talk about for a quick minute is, a lot of the guys and girls that are coming back from Afghan or, have spent a lot of time on the global war on terror. They don't want to go into the basement of a VFW and drink and get stupid and just talk about the old times. A lot of them, they want to go hiking. They might want to go fishing. They might, they might want to go motorcycle riding, because it gets them out of their head for a while, and it gets them to be around their kind of people. And I think that's why VFWs, and I'm going to piss people off, but that's okay. VFWs are dying a slow death, but they're dying because nobody wants to go and talk war stories. They want to go out and, like I said, join the Silkies, marching, rucking, fishing, camping. My friend has a campsite for veterans and first responders. That's things that people want to do now, instead of just going to the VFW and getting liquored up and sitting and wallowing in their pain. Have you noticed the same thing, or is it just me?
I've absolutely noticed the same thing, but you saying it that way frames it a little bit differently for me. And I'm really glad you did that, because what I'm thinking now is the reason VFWs are the way they are, which bothers the heck out of me. I've talked to a lot of younger veterans, or my generation or younger veterans, that you're saying, they're not going. And to me, not going to those places is depriving previous generations of veterans the opportunity to share their stories and imbue their wisdom in us. By the same token, if you really think about it, Vietnam vets, I can understand why they would want to isolate in a little basement somewhere and get themselves liquored up, because they weren't welcomed home properly. We don't have that experience now. We're welcomed home with open arms for the most part. And so, we come in as, I don't want to say as conquering heroes or anything like that, but I know when victory was declared in Iraq in 2003, it was a big deal. Airports, people are clapping, "Hey, good job, guys," and I'm sure there was parades and things like that. I didn't really see those things. I was getting ready to ramp up to go halfway around the world again, but I know they were happening. And if you think back to the Vietnam guys, there was no fanfare. There was, let's just avoid the civilian populace altogether. So it makes a lot of sense, but I think we need to continue. And that's part of what I'm doing is, if I were to throw out literature from my foundation, our foundation, a lot of it talks about the importance of intergenerational connection. So Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, wherever, connecting with Vietnam vets, connecting with World War II vets, and hearing their stories, let them pass on their legacy to us. And they're going to ask questions about our stuff too. They're very curious. I've talked to enough people to where I've sat in a VFW talking with a Korea veteran about, how it went for us with Iraqi freedom. He was very interested about those things. So I think it's extremely important that we connect, and I'm trying to create new ways for us to connect. So I may be bypassing your question a little bit, but I'm trying to get you the answer you need. What we're trying to do is not only put a bunch of guys on motorcycles, but we're also trying to put together a network of ranches across the country. So just like to your point, a place for veterans to congregate that isn't a basement. We're trying to have 5 15-acre properties roughly across the United States to build a network. So if you wanted to drive ride and drive from, say, Florida to California, we're going to have a route for you to take, places for you to stay, commune with other veterans. And we're going to have things like homeless outreach. We're going to have things like equine therapy, yoga, meditation, gardening, art, music. And it's just going to be a property where you have a solace. It's a safe place. And hopefully we're going to station them close to where I'm at right now. I'm surrounded by 3 national parks. I've got Sequoia National Park, Yosemite, and Kings Canyon right around us. And Lemoore, there's not a whole lot to look at directly in Lemoore. It's a bunch of farmland, but very short trip. All of a sudden, you're surrounded by some of the most beautiful places on earth. And these are the kinds of places we're trying to build up ranches for people to come, get reconnected with nature, get reconnected with people they understand, and get the help they need. So,
and before I knew I was going to have you come on. And by the way, thank you for investing in me and trusting in me, helping your podcast and stuff like that. But before I knew you were coming on, I made a phone call to a friend of mine, and he is the president of the New York Hells Angels. And we were talking a little bit, and we were talking about your mission. He's like, that is awesome. He says, we're the 1%ers, but the people that serve this country are the 2%ers. How cool would that be to have a chapters, stuff like that, of the 2%ers that actually fought for this country? And he's like, and he said that he really gives you big ups. He said, because when people came home from Korea and Vietnam, they made up most of the Hells Angels because they needed a home again, and they wanted to ride. So from a 1%er to say congratulations for doing something for the 2%, I think that's pretty amazing.
I appreciate that. That's great news. That's awesome to hear. Thank you.
So, okay, this is a teaching podcast for the last couple of minutes. If there's somebody struggling with their mental health out there, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice that they can use to get some help today?
Definitely connecting with, hopefully, let's say they had for me, I had several mentors in the Marine Corps. I would say call those mentors, treat them like you would if you were on active duty, and be like, bro, I'm having a day, or maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month. Call them up. Say, look, I know we haven't talked in a while. Can you give me some advice, man? I'm hurting. Being humble enough to go, okay, yeah, I'm a big war veteran and I did these cool things. And a lot of people see me and they think I'm a big deal because I was whatever. Like, humble yourself and allow yourself to have human emotions, for crying out loud. You're still a person. And I might as well be looking in the mirror when I say that, because I didn't want to get help for a long time, and I couldn't sleep to save my life. I just kind of went, okay, that's the path I chose, and I'm just never going to sleep again. So have the humility to go, hey, I'm feeling kind of broken today. And don't feel like you cannot ask for help. That's what kills people. They don't feel like it's manly or whatever to ask for help. And I mean, I consider myself a reasonably brave individual, and I've asked for help. Took me a long time to learn to cry too, but I'm okay with crying now. So allowing yourself to not be a robot, I would say, is a pretty good starting point. I think we've already hit on the point of connection with other veterans quite a bit. But I'd say be more intentional about that, because anytime we lose somebody that a lot of us have known, the first question I always ask myself internally and sometimes externally is, who's the last person that spoke to them? How often were you talking to that person? And I've got faces in my own mind of people that I've lost that I was intentional about checking in on. So we cannot save everybody, but I'll tell you this, you can bet your butt we can save a lot of them. That I could say that with absolute, total, and complete conviction. We can save a lot of them. And it pisses me off when I hear people say, once they make that choice, you can't save them. Nope, I don't believe that. I believe that we can save most of them. Not all, but most. But we have to be proactive. We have to be intentional. And we got to be loud about it. Let them know that we still care.
Yeah.
So being willing to ask for help, being intentional about maintaining the connections you've already built in the military, leaning on your family members, leaning on your friends. I guarantee if you're in the military and you've got friends from your hometown that didn't serve, they're going to be awfully glad to hear from you if you need somebody to talk to. And they will be compassionate, probably much more than you realize. So you don't have to call them as a former conquering hero. Call them as a person and say, hey, bro, like, I know I haven't seen you in 10 years. I could use somebody to talk to that's not in my usual circle of friends. And be humble enough to take their advice, to just open up a little bit. For me, I'll tell you, there was a tipping point for me. And this is one of the reasons I don't watch the news. I was watching the CNN Casualty Index. So I believe it would have been 2006. And it's something I checked multiple times a day, every day. And I was looking for the names of people that I had personally served with in the Marine Corps to see if they had been killed. So I would alphabetically scroll through that entire index almost every day.
Yeah.
And I think they had them like red delineations on the guys that had just passed away. And so it was a little easier to scour the list. But I remember looking at that list, and when the number hit 30 people that I had served with that are no longer with us, that's when I broke. Something in me changed that day. And the numbers have continued to grow, and that is what it is. It's just the nature of what we do, I suppose. But be careful about the kind of information you're loading your mind with. I'll say that.
Yes. Yes.
You know, because just because you were required to be a tough guy, you know, totally, I'm not saying male or female, a tough individual to go do these tough things, you don't have to be tough all the time anymore. Like, it's okay to go, hey, I feel sad today. Maybe I should talk to somebody. And I know I'm kind of reiterating that ad nauseum, but it's really important. So I truly think frustration and fear are the things that cause suicides. Fear of, I'm going to lose my pride as a man if I go, hey, I'm broken. Okay, you may lose your pride a little bit, but at least you get to wake up tomorrow and try again. And that's the part that always gets me, is like, you completely gave up on the opportunity to have a better day tomorrow. And I think this is a point that I try to make when I'm on the phone on crisis calls, I call them, and I've been on many of them. There's a metric out there somewhere in, you know, psychological research land of the average trickle-down effect that a suicide has to friends, family, coworkers, the world in general. I believe the number was somewhere in the neighborhood of 115 people, 115 people are impacted and have negative mental health trickle-down effect when somebody decides to kill themselves. So that decision, that one choice on a bad day where you decide that you're not going to fight another day, you're going to negatively impact 115 people and give them mental health problems because of your choice. How selfish is that?
And not only that, but also is suicide is generational. If you look
Yes,
down in lineage, it becomes generational down the line somewhere from somebody that's done it before, right?
absolutely. There's no doubt about that. Um, and and some of the passion that I speak with about this particular issue is because I lived in a pretty big ball of depression for about 4 years after losing my best friend to it when I was young. And so that was kind of the tipping point for me to make me passionate about this issue. Now I'm in the double digits of friends that have done it, and it pisses me off. Um, because I could be having a phone call with that person, but now I can't. So
Yeah. And for me,
I know
it's
the trickle
kind of
down
like,
effects. I've lived it.
I've helped hundreds of thousands of people, but it's the three that I couldn't help that keep me up at night, that keep me doing what I'm doing, because I couldn't help the three, and I was in constant contact with the three, and those are the ones that I couldn't help. So now, how do we, Dallas brother? I love you, brother. Um, how do we get in touch with you? How do we join the mission to save our nation's greatest people? How do we get in your ecosystem?
Well, thank you for asking that question. In the social media world we live in, that's kind of where we live and die as organizations. And what we're trying to grow right now is the easiest way is joining us on Facebook to start with. I would start there. That's where our latest and greatest information is put out. So if you go to Facebook, we are Warriors of the Wind Foundation. It's right under there
Yep.
underneath my name. So Warriors of the Wind Foundation, our tag on our Facebook is facebook.com/Warriors of the Wind 23, established in 23. YouTube is what I plan to grow as a platform as we grow the organization. So as we bring veterans into the fold, they're going to have a sub channel on our YouTube, which we're hoping eventually monetizes in a very significant way to help with our mission, buy land, things like that. So our YouTube is youtube.com/@Warriors OT Wind for Warriors of the Wind. We do have warriorsofthewind.org. And I don't know if there's going to be an opportunity to list these after you publish this, Richard, but
Yep, I will. Yep.
we do have, as many of us in this veteranpreneur tribe space and, our circle of veteran business owner friends, we do have apparel available for sale that would really help us if we can start selling more of that and getting our name out there. So it's a way to not only donate, but you get to get something out of the deal. So we have a business relationship with Really Designs, and we do have an apparel company that backs us that way. So we can put a link to that under this podcast if that's okay.
Yep. And guys, let me just give a big shout out to Ginger and David of Really Design. They make all of our swag. So if you want great swag, check out Ginger and David of Really Designs, and I'll drop that link below also, brother.
Thank you so much for that. They're really, really nice to do business with. If anybody has some apparel needs, I do really recommend. They just got a great way to do business, and they're really nice people. So, what else?
And again, if it wasn't for Robert, the Warrior Strategist Garcia, we would never be put together. We wouldn't be talking right now. So I want to give a big shout out to Rob and his awesome magazine. Put out an awesome magazine called Shift, 50 pages dedicated to entrepreneurship and veterans. So guys, if you love to read magazines, especially online magazines, check out Shift magazine by Robert, the Warrior Strategist Garcia. Brother, I just want to say thank you, and I'm so humbled just to be able to hang out and finally after all these years to be able to chat.
And it's really an honor. And I definitely echo what you said about Rob. He's on my board of directors because I practically begged him to join us. He has been responsible for getting us on ABC and Fox, as well as all sorts of back channel communications that help us get notoriety in the community. So Rob, I do appreciate you very much. I definitely appreciate what you just said. So and you really are turning into a legend, Richard. So I can't tell you how humbling it is to be here talking to you. Because you're doing so much good in the world. And at the end of the day, like, I think we all wake up wanting to do that, but you're actually out there doing it at a magnitude, it's hard not to really respect. So keep doing what you're doing. Thank you for letting me enter this space with you. And hopefully I get to connect you with some of my other friends as we're talking about in the shadows. So I look forward to more of these conversations. So thank you so much.
I love it, brother. And guys, as you know, I always end with a quote by Joel Osteen. He said that every morning we wake up, we can either be a victim of our past or be a victor of our present and our future. If you guys show up every week and watch this show, you're no longer victims of your past, but you're victors of your present and your future. Thank you guys for always showing up. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. I love you guys. Make sure you tune in Friday. I'm having an impromptu interview with Brian Big Country Conwell. We're talking about his new documentary that's going to be dropping soon. So make sure you're here Friday night, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be talking to Olympian Brian Big Country Conwell. I love you guys. He's also
a great guy.
Have an amazing week. And I love you. I love you, Dallas, brother. Have an awesome week.
You too. Appreciate this so much.